In the ancient age of the Imperial City, a powerful lightning strikes from the heavens, causing devastating destruction. Many of the Imperial heroes run from its path of explosions. One of its survivors asks for the help of his leader, the Lord Magister. The wounded one reports to the Magister that they can no longer hold back the demon race's offensive. The Magister tells him to be at ease. This confident leader turns out to be a handsome blonde man named Avril, and he tells his comrade that he can beat the demons. The leader of the Flying Demon Legion laughs at his claim. He lets Avril look around at his already defeated group of companions. The demon is confident that no matter what he does, he cannot harm his army because of their powerful demon magic. Avril does not panic. The Magister just tells his enemy that while ordinary attacks would not work on them, he only needs to do a self-sacrificing destructive offensive. The demon leader is all smiles, believing that even the most powerful magic would not work on them. Avril gathers light energy around his body, willing to take that bet. His body explodes, putting all the demons within range of its destruction. The Magister's surviving companions look on, wondering if their leader has succeeded. A demonic hand reaches out from under the ground. It is revealed to be the demon leader, who is still in high spirits, confident that his army only needs a few minutes to recover. The Imperial heroes are losing all hope of winning the battle. The demon leader announces that all he needs is a few minutes to fully recover. His big smile disappears as he looks at his still missing right arm and wonders why it is not growing back. Avril is revealed to be alive but injured. He tells the demon that his final move created a curse. The demon leader's eyes are full of shock as he hears him say that the entire demon kind will be unable to recover from magic again. The demon screams in agony to heaven, unable to accept his fate. Meanwhile, at the old John's office of Chinese medicine, a man is shouting in complaint. He screams in desperation to get another chance. It turns out the fantasy World of War was just a handheld video game, and his demon character just died because he couldn't be healed with magic. He slams the mobile game console on the table in frustration. This man is Haru, and he continues his complaint that the game is bad. He introduces himself as a well-known doctor of Chinese medicine. He feels frustrated since doctors in modern hospitals are taking all the patients. He feels like he has wasted his life studying medicine. Because of it, he drops his console to the floor to complain about how he is such a failure. He does not realize that the screen on his game is telling him that he has won the opportunity to become a Grand Magister and that all he needs to do is accept or decline it. Suddenly, a woman comes into his office asking for him. She turns out to be a well-dressed, beautiful woman accompanied by 3 bodyguards. Haru is nervous as he recognizes her as Yu-King, the beautiful president of the Zhen family. He is shocked to see that Yu-King calls him a Lord God Doctor. She explains that Haru is actually a successor of an ancient medical family. Now that he is 30 years old and an accomplished doctor in his own right, he can now inherit the billions of the family fortune and marry her. Haru smiles at the luck he has. The blushing Yu-King asks if it is acceptable for him to return to the family. Without an ounce of hesitation, the man accepts her offer. The game console on the ground suddenly lights up to announce that Haru has accepted the proposal to be a Grand Magister. Haru and Yu-King look on as the game counts down. The moment it counts down to 1, the console sucks Haru into itself. The screen says that a new game is about to begin. In the fantasy world of the game, a group of adventurers is caught up in an explosive battle in a C-rank dungeon. Anna, leader of the party, unleashes his holy flame-slashing flash attack. With it, Anima defeats many monsters in his path. He declares that the battle was easy. His comrades praise the man for his victory. It makes Anima cocky that he declares the dungeon to be easy. The pink-haired woman at the party tells everyone that she thinks that the monsters might just have been easy because the dungeon just used them as bait. One of the companions accuses her of looking down on Anima. He hypes up that Anima is a cunning strategist of multiple achievements both as a noble and a magical swordsman. Suddenly, a hooded woman comes out of the shadows. Anima and the others tense up at the appearance of an enemy. On the woman's chest is a cross. On her head is a skull hair wear. She introduces herself as a powerful necromancer. Anima can feel the aura within her, making him feel uneasy. The necromancer announces that she will attack. The party is getting nervous. The necromancer kicks Anima. It is so weak that the swordsman does not feel anything. He counters by stabbing the woman with his holy flame sword, hurting her. The other in the party looks on, seeing that the enemy is weak. The necromancer feels that she needs to get serious. She activates her magic. With it, she summons an army of zombies to surround the party. She declares that they will drown in a wave of undead. Anima is not worried. He activates his holy flame sword. With a slash, he obliterates the army. The necromancer is crying at the scene. She feels frustrated that this would make it the 6th time she has lost to adventurers again, and that it means she has failed her Lord Dungeon Master. However, the party can see that there is still one zombie left in the field. As the smoke is clearing, the zombie's eyes glow. Anima is shocked, believing his holy flame sword should have wiped out every zombie. The zombie takes a breath. This zombie is revealed to be Haru in the body of what looks like a stitched-together stuffed bear with a doctor's outfit, and he is panicking at what is happening to him. Haru is overwhelmed. He hates that he has crossed over to another world at the exact moment that he inherited a fortune and was about to marry the perfect woman. As he demands to be sent back to his world, Anima looks at the bear zombie confused about what he is doing. The crying Haru asks the computer text that keeps appearing what he needs to do. The computer tells him that he can go back to his world if he fulfills the main objective and becomes the strongest magister in the game world. Haru gets excited as the computer also tells him that he can get back to his original world if he dies in the game. As he thinks, the adventurers wonder why the zombie has stopped moving. The pink-haired girl thinks they should be wary of the creature since it blocked Anima's all-out attack. Annie readies his next attack, telling the others that the zombie just got lucky. Deep down, he feels uneasy, not knowing why his attack did not work and wants to hit it with his full strength. Haru can tell that the most powerful person is Anima. He screams at the swordsman to hurry up and kill him. He makes it his mission to die as quickly as possible to return to his original world. Anima takes his demand as a taunt, bruising his ego. This makes the swordsman angry. He readies his flame sword for a strike. The plushy bear zombie tells him to bring it on. Anima unleashes a powerful beam of fire. As Haru gets enveloped in flame, he feels like a fortune and a beautiful woman is just in the corner. Yet his zombie body just falls to the ground without any injuries. Haru is confused. He feels frustrated that he felt nothing. The computer announces that his zombie body has 99% immunity to all physical and magic attacks. The necromancer shows a smug smile. She holds her bear zombie minion to her body and declares that she has shown her true strength as a master necromancer. Haru is so close to the girl that he is blushing. The pink-haired girl asks Anima for them to retreat. Anima aggressively pushes her away. His ego is so bruised that he is determined to kill the zombie no matter what. He winds up his holy flame sword for his next attack. The other adventurers are excited to see their leader's powerful attack, aside from the pink-haired girl who is worried that their leader is about to consume too much mana. Haru is getting excited about his death since he knows the move triples the user's attacks. The zombie bear lets go of his necromancer master to get ready. Anima is charging at the zombie with a body covered with an armor of flames. Haru does not move, ready to take everything in. The necromancer watches on, thinking that her zombie just walked in front of her to protect her with his body. Anima nears the zombie's space. The sword slashes through the zombie's body. Haru tries to feel the damage. Still, he only takes in a damage of -3. He screams that the attack was puny. This embarrasses Anima, who claims he has not yet brought out his full power. He slashes him again, but again he takes in little damage. Again, Haru tells Anima he is too weak to conquer the dungeon. The embarrassed swordsman says he is only getting started. Anima tries to damage him multiple times, yet the bear remains unmoved. The other adventurers looking on do not know what is happening anymore. Anima is already catching his breath. He can see from the zombie's HP bar that he can kill him with one last hit. The swordsman charges up his holy sword once more. Haru feels relieved that he can finally go back. Unfortunately, the holy sword's blade breaks into two the moment it hits the zombie's face. The broken piece lands on the ground in front of the other adventurers. Haru hates the bad timing of when the weapon broke down. More unfortunate is that his zombie body leveled up because he was slashed in succession 1,000 times. He sees that his health now restores 100 times every second. He shakes Anima in frustration. Anima realizes that Haru is a monster. Instead of facing him, the swordsman runs away out of the dungeon. The other party members follow their leader. Haru hates that his only hope is gone. Meanwhile, Anima continues to run and cry as the others try their hardest to reach him. Meanwhile, a drop of saliva falls. It turns out the necromancer has just woken up after falling asleep from how long the battle went. The necromancer gets confused to see Haru breaking down into tears for not getting killed. Haru then realizes the necromancer is looking at him. He shakes her, demanding that she take him back from wherever he came from. The woman shows her hands away from her. She tells the bear zombie that since she is the strongest zombie she has ever summoned, he will help her deter invading adventurers from now on and will never be unsummoned back. This leads Haru to walk away from her, determined to find a way to die all by himself. This angers the necromancer, who thinks he is being rude to her. She tells him to halt, freezing the bear zombie's body in place. He wonders why he cannot move. The necromancer tells him that she can always stop his movements and reminds him that this means he has no choice but to listen to everything she wants from him. She looks closely at the zombie's body and wonders why her summon has a consciousness of its own. She hugs the zombie as she is overwhelmed by how cuddly and lovable he is compared to his other zombies. She suddenly feels that something is off. She realizes that she was injured by the Holy Flame Sword a while ago. Haru volunteers to treat her. The necromancer thinks she is being silly since there is no magic he can unleash on a demon like her cursed to never be healed by magic. He tells her that he can do it. He suddenly takes off her hood to get a better look at her injury. He then pulls out some pins while declaring that he is a god of a doctor. He puts pins on the girl's shoulder where the wound is near, putting her in mild relief. Haru then takes a look at her arm. Using his vast medical knowledge, he operates on the girl's arm. Then he bandages it up. The necromancer is amazed that her arm feels much better now. She does not understand how he did it despite the curse of all demons. It makes her suspicious that he is actually not a summoned monster, making the bear zombie nervous. Haru tries to keep it to himself that he is someone from another world, so he tells her that her summoning skill simply upgraded to the point that she can summon him, and then changes the subject to offer to give her a massage. He has a big grin on his face as he readies to massage her. It turns out it is a special style of medical massage that can render a body overwhelmed to exhaustion. The girl goes unconscious as Haru reveals that he also pierced an acupoint with a needle for safe measure. With nothing to stop him, Haru rushes to the dungeon entrance, determined to find a path of death. He is excited as a fortune and a beautiful woman awaits him. As he enters the light of the outdoors, he declares that he is coming. He is surprised as he realizes that there is no ground the moment he gets out of the dungeon. He falls off the cliff as he complains about why a cave entrance is so high up. He then realizes that this only makes his death all the more quicker. The monster below sees him falling from the sky. He then falls to the ground, receiving damage that almost empties his HP. As his health goes up, he hates that he was so close yet still not dead. He sees the monsters near him and demands that they attack him. The monsters are all scared and suspicious of him since he fell from the dungeon. They run away from him, leaving the bear zombie frustrated. Haru patches up his leg as he complains about how uncooperative monsters are. He tells himself that he needs to do everything himself. He looks at his character stats screen to see what skills he has. He sees that his character has mountains of abilities to choose from. He wonders why such an itty-bitty teddy bear body has so many abilities. He forgets about and concentrates on using these abilities on himself. He shouts out to call thunder upon himself. He gets disappointed that nothing happened. He demands to know why he can't use it, so the computer tells him that he does not have enough MP. He checks his MP and is disappointed that it is not enough. He feels like he is about to burst since dying is so hard. He does not realize that behind him are three faces of a three-headed giant monster dog that seems ready to attack him. With another unsuccessful attempt at death, Haru decides to seek another method of dying. Just then, he realizes that his head has gotten wet and wonders if it even rains in the dungeon. However, this is far from the case as there is actually a monster snarling right behind him. Turning around, he screams in surprise upon recognizing the elite three-headed dog, which can cause critical strikes when attacking. Knowing its strength, he happily surrenders, smiling in satisfaction as the beast bites his body. Its jaws are powerful, but to their surprise, the canine's teeth shatter upon clenching hard. The two other heads look on in confusion as the middle one grimaces in pain. Covered with saliva, Haru is promptly spat back to the ground where he complains about their attack stopping. Suddenly, the system sends him notice, saying he's received a skill that reflects a small percentage of damage. The dog is recuperated and stomps on the ground to attack while the zombie is distracted. He's sent flying as infernal raging flames, the monster's unique skill, erupt from the ground. Blazing hard, the fire envelops him for a long time, but instead of receiving tremendous damage like he's supposed to, he tells them to crank the heat up. Meanwhile, the monsters from before were watching nearby and acknowledged his unnaturally high magic resistance. Regardless of the reason, there's an even bigger problem coming their way. Brimming with power, the infernal dog is seconds away from entering its berserker mode, caused by extreme wrath. In this state, even overlord bosses would take caution. The beast's flames began wrapping around Haru's body like a rope, and he looked on in confusion as he had never seen such a skill inside the game before. Tied down with nowhere else to go, the dog has a free shot. In an instant, it lunged in and delivered a devastating flurry of slashes, dealing enormous damage. In berserker mode, the attack dealt 70% of the zombie's health. He falls to the ground, but despite the pain, he smiles with newfound hope. believing he finally has a chance at death. Not wanting to recover, he gets up and rushes to the dog, urging it to strike once more. Unfortunately, he sees the beast completely dazed and foaming out of the mouth. It collapses soon after, and the system announces that Haru has killed it with the damage-reflecting skill from earlier. To make matters worse, the victory has increased his stats and level, making it even harder to die. The monster's body disappears, leaving a mysterious item drop on the ground. Taking a closer look, the zombie sees that it's the dog's tusk, which increases his total MP and supplements his ordinary attacks with infernal flames. Based on his experience with the game, the item is used to craft armor, but would be totally useless to him. He thinks this at first, but a brilliant idea strikes his mind in that instant. Equipment also increases MP, so wearing the right ones will allow him to use stronger skills, which can kill him. A devious chuckle makes its way out of him as he gets ready to carry his new plan out. He malevolently turns to the monsters who watch their fight, intending to slay them for item drops. Sensing danger, the three immediately ran as fast as they could, telling each other to alert the floor boss about Alice's zombie invading their territory. They managed to outrun Haru's short legs, leaving him panting and alone in the forest. Plopping to the ground in disappointment, he wonders if there's no faster way to court death. Accepting things for how they are, he decides to use the power of the skills at hand instead. Tinkering around for what's available, he settles for a small fireball and launches it high into the sky. It looked that way, but a barely recognizable flame just appeared a few feet from him. As expected, his current skill levels are still too weak to achieve what he wants to. As he's sighing in resignation, he turns around in surprise and screams in shock as he sees a huge fireball speeding in his direction. Barely managing to shout that his spell wasn't that big, the fireball crashes to the ground, causing a huge explosion. Alas, it only manages to wipe out half of his health, and he still asks for something stronger. The smoke began to settle and, to his surprise, started revealing an unfamiliar body. Had fallen from the sky and was now hugging him without any warning whatsoever. Turning bright red, he wonders why such things had kept happening ever since he crossed over into the game. With their faces inches away from each other, he sees her dazed eyes. Her face gets closer, and he realizes that he was leaning in for a kiss. To Haru's surprise, the mysterious girl who fell from the sky was suddenly kissing him. He tried to flail around, not knowing who she was and what in the world was happening. Finally breaking the kiss, she steps away. He's left dazed on the floor as she complains about being forced to use a succubus bite. Dorothy, the 5th floor's boss, glowered at him, finding his actions against her land unforgivable. The monsters from before rush to her, glad that their master had finally arrived to save them. She assures them that she's already taken care of the intruder and will do so with any more in the future. They awkwardly look on and explain that the zombie isn't an intruder, but a monster who fell from the 3rd floor. Her expression changes into something quite obviously displeased. She scolds her subjects and goes on about wasting a precious succubus bite on a mere zombie. Moreover, it was her first kiss, and she regrets using it on something unimportant. Angered out of her wits, she throws the trespasser away and vows to settle things with Alice. As they're about to leave, Haru called out, telling them to wait. To their surprise, he brightly asks if they're really leaving without killing him. Dorothy gasps, unable to believe that he's up, as her kiss should leave the target in the dream world forever. With an unconvincing expression, he says he won't fall for a woman's temptation so easily. The succubus is insulted, as the zombie outright brags about resisting her powerful attack. If her mana wasn't emptied out, she would kill him right then and there. He even goes on about looking for stronger monsters who can dispose of him. Hearing this takes her by surprise, and she confirms that he actually wants his life to be taken away. As such, she directs him to a bunch of human adventurers who should have no problem taking him out. Following her directions right away, he calls her a good person while running away. With a sly smile, she tells her subject to notify the dungeon master, as those adventurers are actually too strong. Burning with the desire for vindication, she tells the zombie to die by the adventurer's hands. In the middle of the forest, a spell causes a huge explosion. A couple of monsters are slain, and a bunch of adventurers curse the succubus for getting away. The three are brothers, all of whom are high-level and wielders of great spells. The youngest, Pit, repulsively vows to have his way with her once they catch the floor boss. They stop in their tracks upon seeing a familiar zombie. Haru has arrived and confirms that they're the group he is looking for. That said, he greets the intruders with a foolishly welcoming smile. Meanwhile, Dorothy watches the ridiculous encounter from nearby, wanting to see him get torn to shreds with her own eyes. hungry for revenge. The presence of a zombie on the 5th floor is odd, but regardless of the reason, they decide to get rid of the monster. Haru interrupts the adventurer's conversation and says he'll be leaving them with 2 options. The first is to kill him and be on their way, and the second is to surrender all their mana-boosting equipment they possess. Hearing such a brave threat from a tiny zombie was so ridiculous that the 3 fell silent. They laugh after a while, amused that the monster even dares to threaten them. Pit brims with power, taking it upon himself to finish the creature off. He casts Diving Judgment, calling on a sword to suddenly drive through the target's chest. Still watching in the dark, Dorothy quietly cheers them on, asking for even more brutal attacks. The attack deals about 1/3 of Haru's health, but the youngest brother's expression unexpectedly grows dark. He falls to the ground, likely falling victim to the damage reflection effect. The other 2 rush to their sibling, asking if he's okay and wondering what skill could possibly cause such damage. He has no idea what happened, but shares that he felt a sharp pain the moment he struck the zombie. Without wasting too much time, Haru hops back up as if nothing happened, and says he'd rather take their items if their attacks are going to be so weak. Since physical attacks aren't working, the second brother, Sham, steps forward to try magic spells. With a special wand, he summons a huge ball of fire to the sky and brings it down like a meteor at the poor zombie. The adventurer arrogantly brags about his power, but worries deep inside about just barely getting the job done. However, a familiar paw shoots up from the smoke and quickly swipes the wand off Sham's hand. Haru has identified it as a valuable magic item and has chosen to take it for himself instead. The magician screams at him, questioning how a lowly zombie could retain so much health after his attack. Although he can't explain, he reveals the truth about his 99% magic immunity. Dorothy hears this and wonders if a zombie could actually be so powerful. Knowing he can't win, the second brother breaks out in cold sweats and urges his siblings to run away. Finally, the eldest Louis steps in to take matters into his own hands. As it's ultimately up to him, he draws his bow far back and charges the arrow with magic. With the release, another huge blast explodes in the middle of the forest. The wind blows in the night as Haru faces off against Louis. Looking at his face, the zombie can't deny that his aura is completely different and seems more promising than the 2 who came before. Fortunately, that's exactly how he wants things to be. He lunges right at the adventurer with a smile, telling him to kill him if he can. With a loud battle cry, the archer tells him to drop dead and shoots his weapon. The arrow flies straight and fast. It hits the zombie right in the head and pushes him back to the ground. It doesn't stop there, as the magic-infused projectile then explodes inside its target. Despite the flashy display, Haru gets up, completely unharmed with the arrow still in his forehead. He takes it out and throws it to the ground in frustration, screaming that it's too weak to do anything. Louis smiles smugly, saying it's only the beginning. His words and confidence allow the zombie to regain his hope, believing that he must have a stronger attack. Just then, hypertoxic vines from below began sneaking up onto his leg. In a surprising turn of events, they grew longer and quickly wrapped around the target's body. The arrow carried a powerful manipulation effect, and the vines have now grown thick enough to suspend him in the air. For some reason, Haru blushes, feeling oddly satisfied by the bindings getting tighter. However, he says the damage is still too low, frustrating the adventurer even more. The manipulation magic was their trump card, and since that won't work either, the 3 brothers quickly escaped. Feeling betrayed by how weak they all were, the zombie burns with anger and calls them frauds. If they can't kill him, they should have just said so and not wasted his precious time. Dorothy looks on in disbelief, not knowing how a puny zombie could send the infamous brothers running away. As he continues to struggle with the vines, she wonders if Allah sent him to invade her territory. The necromancer's foolish image flashes in her mind, and she shakes her head, quickly realizing that she's giving the floor boss more credit than she deserves. Considering this, the succubus decides that she can take the powerful zombie for herself instead. She joyfully walks to him, acting nice and greeting him, but failing to notice the vines at her feet. The realization comes too late, and the toxic plants have already begun wrapping around her body. Meanwhile, the zombie barely frees his nose and mouth and complains about nearly suffocating. An idea comes to mind as he remembers that he actually wants to pass away. While she's surprised, the vines keep her still, and they stay that way for a while. Haru soon turns away in frustration, clicking his tongue as he's reminded that zombies don't need to breathe. Trapped in the thick plants, the floor boss can't do anything but wait for the dungeon master's help. However, the otherworlder doesn't have the luxury of time and hates the idea of wasting potential death moments there. She looks on in confusion as he starts to do something. A small ball of flame appears in his hand. Sensing danger, the succubus scolds him and questions his plan, but it's the only way to free himself. He casts the spell and blasts himself in the face with a fireball. Fortunately, it works, and he falls to the ground, freed as the vines let go. He whines about expecting a bit more damage to himself and gets scolded for missing the point. Having seen this, Dorothy finally questions his being, as demons should be unable to recover health so easily. Haru turns to her and moves on to free her as well. Still oblivious to her original intentions, he thanks her for leading him to his potential killers. That said, she seriously didn't expect them to fail and run away from a mere zombie. A sudden scream rings out as the former doctor sees that she's hurt from contact with the vines. Looking at herself, the succubus reaction is much tamer than his and accepts it for what it is. Although it isn't too serious, she nonchalantly says it'll take about a decade or so to heal. Unwilling to accept it, he offers to treat the injury as a way to repay her for helping him find the adventurers. She sees him fuss and questions his intentions, as demons obviously can't treat an injury. After taking a closer look, he diagnoses that she's suffering from the toxins in the vine. He's left without much of a choice, and relies on an embarrassing and questionable method. Taking a deep breath, he opens his mouth wide and places it on her wounds. From there, he sucks the poison in her thigh and quickly spits it out. She breathes deep, feeling relief from the effective treatment. Satisfied with her reaction, he moves on to the next wound, determined to save the succubus. Things go well, and her screams of relief ring throughout the woods. Meanwhile, Alice has finally noticed her zombie is missing and wonders where he's gone, having spit all the poison out of Dorothy's body. Haru wipes the residue off his mouth. She cautiously looks at him and bashfully asks if things are going to be okay now. With a proud thumbs up, he says he's done hiding the oddly satisfied expression he has inside. The former doctor takes her hand and says all that's left is applying herbal medicine to the wounds. Her eyes glitter in surprise and wonder as the ointment actually begins healing her injuries. The questions finally set in, and she asks how a demon, doomed out of recovery magic, could achieve this. Unable to say that the herbs aren't from this world in the first place, he gives a shallow excuse and says the curse might have weakened after so many years. Not only is he able to fight on such a high level, but he's also able to treat demon injuries. With this, the floor boss concludes that an undoubtedly invaluable treasure has fallen into her grasp. Taking the chance, she hugs him tight and asks how she could ever repay his kindness. As long as she acquires him, she's bound to defeat more adventurers and improve her performance. Faced with her bountiful gesture, he gets excited and asks if he can really ask for anything he wants. She promises to grant it with a smile, but is just happy that he's fallen for her succubus charms. He starts to speak his wishes and, to her absolute confusion, wishes for her to kill him. The awkward moment passes and he sighs hard, saying the unimpressive adventurers from earlier could never kill him. That said, there must be powerful demon characters, and she can act as a bridge to get him acquainted. Still unable to grasp the wish, she asks why he needs to die in the first place. He simply says that it's for the sake of money and marriage, but doesn't explain any more. Brushing it off as the characteristics of a dense idiot, she accepts his request, thinking it makes things easier. The boss says she knows the dungeon master, who's the strongest monster he could possibly encounter there. But before anything like that, she asks him to defeat the adventurers invading her territory. After all, some of them might be strong enough to grant his wish. He's already convinced, but she takes it a step further and uses her charm, saying he couldn't possibly bear to see her get hurt again. Without much of a fight, he raises his arm in agreement, and they're ready to seal the deal. Just then, a loud voice cuts through the air, and Alice arrives after traveling down the cliff with her zombie army. Filled with anger, she curses Dorothy for even trying to steal her subject away. She leaps high to deliver a devastating blow. However, her flying kick hits and deals an insultingly low amount of damage to her fellow boss. With a scarily unemotional expression, the succubus says she started the physical fight and grips Alice's foot. She lets her anger burst and whips the necromancer around, dealing far more damage with the cathartic release. In a matter of seconds, the one-sided fight ends with Dorothy's victory. Haru covers his face in second-hand embarrassment, questioning how she even became a floor boss. The loser gets up, delusionally saying that she almost won. She clings to her overpowered zombie and insists that she owns him regardless of their matched result. She's even named him 132 as he's part of the 132nd zombie swarm she called forth. Taking his paw, Dorothy pulls him into her arms. She doesn't care about the summoners and argues that it'd be a waste for him to be under her care. The necromancer grabs him as well, and the two pull on either side of the zombie, determined to claim ownership. After tugging for a while, the expected happens, and Haru rips into two separate pieces. They look on in shock as he flies into the air with cotton and stuffing spilling out his body. He falls to the ground with a light thud, but his consciousness makes him scream in agony. Meanwhile, in the human realm's king's city, Ardenheim was a simple tavern. A hand loudly pushes the door open, and tossed in the severed head of a huge red dragon. It's the level 75 Blaze Dragon Lord, which people can't believe could be defeated by humans. The adventurer who brought it in calls to the boss, who asks if he's ready to take on another quest. The Empire's star adventurer Edward seeks a more challenging task, that is, if there is one. The tavern owner apologetically tells Edward they have no harder mission and suggests finding another tavern. Waving it off, he says he'll find something later on and asks for his reward instead. A newcomer talks and asks who the awkward-looking guy is and quickly gets shushed by the others. The man in front of them is the strongest bounty hunter in the Empire and has never been defeated. Loud shouting comes from outside, taking everyone's attention. A familiar silhouette runs toward the tavern in a hurry. Anima barges into the establishment with a frightful expression and says he's being followed by a terrifying beast. His subordinate desperately clings to him, promising that it's safe, but he insists that they'll be caught. Intrigued and slightly bothered, Edward asks what the issue is. As such, they explain the events that transpired in the dungeon. Everyone listens intently, and all scream in disbelief after hearing that they were defeated by a zombie. It's an unbelievable story, but they insist that the zombie was immune to both physical and magic-based attacks, leaving Anima traumatized. The jeers and mocking begin to flood in, as the idea of being defeated by such a low-level monster is ridiculous. They insist and defend themselves, but even Edward's expression makes it clear that he's doubtful. Unable to take it anymore, Anima screams and offers 1,000 gold coins to anyone who can kill that zombie. Given the unbelievably high reward, the top knight smiles and takes on the mission. He even plays along with their fantasy, saying the young master cannot be disrespected like that. The two men are assured of victory, but the lone woman in their party cannot calm her heart, wondering if he can really succeed. They're blinded by faith and his title, certain that he can't be defeated by any monster there. After all, he's the man who even stood against the Demon Lord and lived to tell the tale. Back in the dungeon, a hand busily works on stitches. After a while, Haru gets up and scolds the two bosses, asking if they know how painful it is to break a waist. They apologize, but Dorothy immediately proceeds to pressure Alice into giving her subject up. She even threatens to use force and reminds them that they're currently in her territory. Although trembling, unaware of how terrible a position she's in, the necromancer swallows her fear and says she still has Haru by her side. With a quick wave of her arms, she orders her subject to dispose of the succubus, causing his body to move on its own. Dorothy blushes hard and screams as he suddenly pounces at her and hugs her tight. While she orders him to let go of her, Alice smugly smiles, proud of her beloved subject's power. Just then, a huge statue opened its eyes and loud wailing began to ring throughout the dungeon. Looking out, the two bosses quickly realize what's happening. It's the dungeon master's signal for them to gather, so Dorothy asks if they still won't let her go. Waving her finger around, Alice says she got lucky this time and releases Haru from her command. The two breathe in relief as he regains control over his body. They start walking to answer the master's call, but the succubus makes it clear that she hasn't given up on the zombie. Meanwhile, the otherworlder gets excited, as meeting the strongest monster there means his best chance to die. The two press a button, and Haru's mouth opens wide, unable to believe that there's suddenly a fancy golden elevator in front of him. On the sides, he sees a demon working hard to manually operate a pulley. They all step inside and wait to reach the master's floor. Alice whispers, warning her subject against acting up during their meeting. Given his curiosity, she explains that he's a level 65 elite boss with unimaginable strength. Unfortunately, this only gives Haru a bigger desire and stronger determination to annoy the top boss. Finally, they reach the dungeon's 7th floor, where the palace is found. A large set of fingers drums on an armrest. Minotaur, the dungeon master, begins to run out of patience and asks why the two remaining floor bosses aren't there yet. First floor boss Rimaru explains that both floors faced intruders, but it's still odd for Dorothy to underperform. With this, the other floor masters, A and Lilith, propose replacing floor bosses. The conversation doesn't drag on as the two latecomers finally arrive, cautiously apologizing for the delay. The master doesn't dawdle and tells them to hurry as they have several important matters to discuss. While he sits on the throne, Haru looks on in excitement, finally seeing the strongest monster there. Now he can find out if Minotaur has what it takes to send him back home. He he activates the special magic equipment from the three adventurer brothers, taking everyone by surprise. As no one expected such actions, a huge fireball openly shoots at the dungeon master and causes a huge explosion in the middle of the throne room. They all gasp in shock, wondering what had just happened. Meanwhile, Minotaur simply coughs the smoke away. With his eyes glowing in anger and power, he demands to know who dared to attack him. As things are going exactly as he had hoped, Haru stepped forward, proudly declaring himself to be the attacker. Trying to take control of the situation, Dorothy asks the master to remain calm, while Alice covers Haru's mouth, as she explains how the dumb zombie is the necromancer's underling. The Minotaur tells them to quiet down. They tremble in fear when he stands over them, expecting the punishment he was about to sentence. Even Alice is unable to do anything when he grabs the assailant from her grasp. Staring down at the zombie, he calls him out for being quite bold. Haru actually grimaces from the aura of the master, unable to deny the power of a level 65 demon. But then again, he happily accepts his fate, as greeting death is precisely what he wants to do. Since he's asking for it, Minotaur reaches for something behind him, ready to deal his punishment. The two floor bosses already expect the worst. Surprisingly, the item he reaches out for is a pair of reading glasses, which are promptly placed on his face. Haru watches in confusion, as the master intently reads a handbook and starts listing a bunch of expenses brought on by his attack. All in all, the price of his actions is worth 8,000 crystals, and he's given the option of paying in installments. Alice desperately reaches out, begging for him to lower the price in any way. He then goes on about how she is the worst performer among them, and that he was already considering a salary cut. Meanwhile, Haru is outraged and demands to know why demons are charging instead of killing him. Lilith scoffs at his reasoning, saying it's just fitting for Alice's subordinate. As demons cannot regenerate, there will be no one to pay his dues should he die from a punishment. Since he's obviously dirt poor, Minotaur says he can pay in 6 even installments instead. While the zombie curses for failing to die, the necromancer grabs him and weeps about the debt she was thrown into. Coughing to get everyone's attention, the dungeon master moves on and gets down to business. He gathered everyone there as he had to inform them of something urgent and important. With a serious expression, he announces that the Devil King ran away again last night. Hearing this, an awkward silence passes through the room. After a while, the bosses sigh, saying it isn't anything new, and that the guards will find the king in a couple of days. Confused, Haru asks how often the ruler disappears and is told that it happens thrice a month on average. Unable to contain his exasperation, Minotaur says things aren't as simple this time around. The king's guards have searched 30 kilometers around the city, but unlike before, failed to find their ruler. The king mentioned something about going into the human kingdom, so the search might be successful around the border. The master then takes an illustration of their target to make the search fairly easier. They all look at the piece of parchment in shock and awe. Haru, for one, argues that it's too abstract, looking at a childish drawing of a purple-haired girl prancing in the fields. The 4th floor boss A raises his hand with a question. It's the peak of the adventure season, meaning they're too busy defending to search for the Devil King. Nodding at the good point, Minotaur says he's thought of that, along with the solution. He then places the responsibility on Alice's shoulders, much to her surprise. After all, while she's useless inside the dungeon, her horde of zombies would make a search more efficient. She argues at first, but immediately accepts the mission. When he offers to take 2,000 crystals off her debt, Haru judgmentally looks at his master, deeming her to be too weak-willed. With this, the floor bosses are told to leave and prepare for the task at hand. As they turn away, the zombie screams and shouts, telling the dungeon master to at least hit him twice. Alice manages to shut him up and goes to look for the Devil King as ordered. Minotaur can only look on in confusion, finding him to be the strangest zombie he's encountered. With the meeting over, they all return to their respective floors, and Alice tosses Haru away in anger. She scolds him for incurring a massive debt, but he just argues that he didn't expect such a response. Dorothy takes the opportunity and sides with the zombie, saying his master keeps on shouting at her subordinates. Hugging and putting her face close to his, she asks him to stay by her side instead. Alice commands him to attack her, so his body moves on its own and casts a fire spell. Regardless of it all, he is her summon, and she has no intention of giving him up to anyone else. The two leave Dorothy with a sing teardo, ignoring her injured cries completely. That said, all should be okay, as the dungeon master is still unaware of how powerful the zombie is. In the end, she believes he'll fall into her grasp eventually. Since she's been given an order, Alice gets to work and starts an incantation. Casting it on the ground, she summons an undead wave to rise from the hard soil. She hands them copies of the Devil King's illustration and tells everyone to bring her back immediately. Slapping a copy on Haru's chest, she tells him to do his best and find her, or else he'll wish she was dead. Joining the line of zombies, he grumbles about how she should do it herself, if she's so good at ordering people around. Lightning strikes as he realizes that the mission to find the king could allow him to run away again. In front of them was a portal gate and a clear path to escape. Haru is surrounded by no one but the brainless zombies who undoubtedly can't stop him. With this, he makes a run for it and dashes toward the portal, leading them all in the dust. Panting in exhaustion, he eventually gets far enough to free himself from Alice's influence. However, he's only escaped her clutches, but dying is going to be a difficult mission. Just then, the ground shakes and a loud thud echoes as a heavy being walks toward him. Turning around, he sees a group of magic core giants towering over his small body. Normally, one would fear for their life, but the encounter actually makes him much happier. Such giants drop a magic core that permanently increases his MP, which would grant him access to stronger spells. With a determined expression, the zombie charged in to claim his wishes. Unfortunately, his little body is no match for the steel giant, which easily swats him away. Crashing into the ground hard enough to dig a crater, he crawls out with an amused smile, calling them worthy opponents. He then confidently brags that their strength will also be their doom due to his damage reflection spell. He says this and belatedly realizes that their health points did not decrease at all. As he throws a fit in confusion, the system explains that his spell cannot affect non-living things. That was not within his expectations, but it should still be fine. He walks forward once more, intending to take them down with an avalanche of punches. Like before, a mere swat sends the poor and puny zombie flying away. The giants are bewildered as he proceeds to whine about them ganging up on a measly level 2 zombie. What's more, a human ear pricks up as his cries ring all throughout the forest. It's Anima's party. While some are worried about the weird sounds, others are completely confident, feeling invincible as the valiant adventurer Edward is with them. The famous warrior is still skeptical, unable to believe how strong the zombie supposedly is. They then go on to exaggerate how big and powerful Haru is, emphasizing how different he is from others. Surprisingly gullible, Edward believes every word and forms the image of a terrifying foe in his mind. Anima chimes in with crazed eyes, promising to even endorse him for knighthood, should he defeat the zombie. Suddenly, loud and heavy sounds of clanging metal approached. A grim expression spreads throughout their faces as the beings speed to where they are. It's the core giants from before, and they're running as if their lives depended on it. Edward grips his sword, glad that he can finally start fighting. A swift swing of his blade is all it takes to bring the powerful giants down. What was supposedly a hard steel body was reduced to a pile of oil and scraps in an instant. As he retrieves the magic cores that were dropped, the rest of the party is reassured of their victory and are glad to have him around. That said, they wonder why the giants were so panicked and what could possibly make them act that way. Even Edward is cautious, thinking they might have encountered a Devil King level demon. Meanwhile, Haru is still hard at work, giving all he can to deliver devastating punches. With one last attack, he finally manages to take one of the giants out, making it explode into scraps. He triumphantly takes a pose, brimming with pride as the system announces his level up. Although it was a tough battle, he was able to get his hands on a magic core in the end. He crushes the crystal without a second thought and sees his MP increase by 10. While it added less than expected, it still gives him hope. Suddenly, a purple-haired girl speaks from behind, surprised that he actually whittled the giant down with punches. A bright smile is spread across her face, and she says it's the first time she's seen such an interesting zombie. He fails to recognize her and brushes her off as a weak-looking child. Disinterested, he coolly walks away, telling her to leave as it's dangerous there. Although surprised that he doesn't know who she is, the situation is enough to interest her. As such, he asks why he was so hell-bent on attacking the giant, and is told that he wants to increase his MP. Despite his obvious attempt at killing the conversation, she continues to pry into his intentions and doesn't notice the core giant about to attack her from behind. In a panic, Haru urgently places himself between them to take the strike in her place. He's sent flying, having been hit directly, and barely clings to life. The girl carries him, worried and wondering if he's okay. To her surprise, he gets back on his feet, again telling her to get behind him. Facing 2 raging giants, he bravely charged in, ready to take everything they have to offer. Seeing him risk his life for her, the demon blushes, wondering if this is what it feels like to be protected. What she doesn't know is that the zombie is simply determined and eager to die. The battle rages on, and an hour later, the sounds of clanging metal finally stop. He heaves in exhaustion and raises his hand, proud of the victory he achieved on his own. However, it doesn't last long as fatigue takes over his entire body, making him collapse. Instead of falling to the ground, a soft pair of arms cushions his body. The female demon has caught him, and for risking his life to protect her, she's decided to help him out. She casts and engraves a curse, and bright red flames suddenly envelop his entire being. In absolute bewilderment, he finds that the curse nearly doubled his total HP. Smiling brightly at her savior, she admits forgetting to tell him something, and reveals that she's Edith, the level 99 Devil King who everyone is looking for. Acting like she didn't just reveal a huge secret, Edith goes on about how nice it is to be protected for once. Given that, she decides that just boosting Haru's max health isn't enough of a reward. After a while of thinking, she gets a brilliant idea and hands the confused zombie a purple orb. Apparently, crushing it when he's in danger will undoubtedly save his life. Since she still needed to go to the human kingdom, the king brightly hops on her way. Meanwhile, the zombie is left stunned and looks at the piece of paper he was given. Blaming the illustration for being ridiculously inaccurate, he throws it to the ground in anger. The moment of realization finally sets in, and he quickly tries to run after her, wanting another chance at death. On the way, he bumps into something hard and finds Alice blocking his way. She tugs on his ear and scolds him for slacking off when he should be looking for the Devil King. Fortunately, he manages to let her know that he encountered Edith and that she's running to the human kingdom. However, without the dungeon master's approval, since none of them can leave the vicinity to pursue. High-pitched screeching suddenly filled the air as a swarm of bats flew around to cover the sky. Haru was annoyed by the noise, but Alice realized that something bigger was happening. The bats were paired with a bright red flame, illuminating most of the forest with its light. Without wasting a second, the necromancer pulls her zombies, saying they have to return to the dungeon. They're supposed to be on a mission to find and retrieve the Devil King, but the alert from earlier only triggers when there's a crisis in the dungeon. On the 6th floor, something terrible was happening. The other floor bosses had fallen, and Lilith was barely holding on after a fierce battle. Edward stood before her, unscathed as he called them all too weak to even fight him. The party he's accompanying showers him with praise, saying a level dungeon is nothing compared to him. However, he can't let go of the unsettling feeling that the core giants from earlier were escaping from something stronger. Anima rapidly turns his head in all directions, seemingly looking for something in the dark. Despite having gone deep, they still haven't encountered the necromancer boss nor her zombie. Regardless, his members are sure that Edward will take care of them, no matter what happens. Just then, Lilith warns them against getting too complacent, as she's already activated the bat alert. With this, the wrath of the entire dungeon is sure to come their way. The top adventurer draws his blade, saying he's ready to take on the challenge in that case. That way, he can at least take care of all of them in one quick go. He brings his blade down with the full intention to kill her. The steel clangs as it's parried by something large and hard. Between the two was the dungeon master, who has come to protect his home and people. Dorothy rushed to check on Lilith, who is just barely hanging on to life. That said, the other bosses have sustained heavy and life-threatening injuries. Although feeling bad for them, the succubus can't help but be relieved as she was still on the 7th floor. Meanwhile, Minotaur asks the adventurer why he's in a level dungeon when he's already level 83. He backs away after slashing the master. To Edward, it's a question that need not even be asked, as he simply exists to eradicate evil. As Dorothy rushes to aid him, the adventurer lets his disappointment for their strength out and regrets expecting more. However, since the monsters have begun to gather anyway, he raises his sword and gathers his powers, intending to take them all out together. Knowing he's a person they can't match, the master tells everyone to do what they can and run away. However, it's far too late, as the adventurer had already set his targets. Just then, a voice echoes throughout the floor, telling him to spare the overgrown cow. Alice had arrived just in time, with her hand still tightly gripping a flailing Haru. Anima reacts immediately, identifying the zombie and telling the top adventurer to kill him. Edward can't help but be surprised, having expected a far more sinister entity based on their description. As he reminds himself that the employer's wishes come first, Alice gets all fired up and steps forward. Haru is filled with dread as the necromancer eerily tells him to get ready. She lifts him up and strikes a pose like a baseball player, ignoring the zombie's confused cries. With strength he didn't know she had, she throws him right at the adventurers. Pitched right at the invading adventurers, Haru screams as he flies through the air. Edward is slightly insulted, finding it ridiculous to go up against a level 5 zombie. Meeting the zooming monster head-on, he finishes things in one smooth motion, making the gap in power strikingly clear. The target is cut cleanly in half and for some reason explodes mid-air. He falls to the ground, unmoving with stuffing spilling out. Again, Edward turns to his employers in disbelief, but they argue that he isn't supposed to be so weak. He sighs in disbelief, troubled that the future of the Empire is being entrusted to such buffoons. Just then, he hears Shrill arguing about the events that just transpired. Looking at the source, he sees the 2 remaining floor bosses, fighting and screaming like children. Fortunately for the human kingdom, this generation of demons doesn't seem too reliable either. The lady's freeze as a booming voice tells them to stop immediately. Minotaur says it is not the time to quarrel, and commands them to take the other monsters to safety. They insist on fighting alongside him and protecting their home with everything they have. However, it's all useless as they can't defeat him even if the entire dungeon banded together. Taking his last stand, the dungeon master stood his ground and, with a scream, released his remaining power. He grew larger, but the adventurer remains unimpressed. Meanwhile, Alice drags Dorothy away, wanting to follow their lord's orders. Edward scoffs, finding the idea of monsters sacrificing themselves despicably eye-opening. He takes his necklace in his hand and, to pay his respects, decides to give it his all as well. Glowing with power, various status boosts blessed his body, and the master couldn't help but stare in shock and awe. The blinding light took the rest of the monsters' attention, causing them all to freeze in shock. As a secret technique, Edward called on the 7 saints. The skill requires sacrificing a lord-level monster to obtain, meaning he's already defeated 7 bosses before. Minotaur trembled at the sight and aura of the man before him. Eventually, his legs buckle and give in. As his knees hit the ground, the dungeon master lowers its head and admits his defeat. The adventurer smiles, satisfied to make the gap in their power known to everyone there. Calling him a vile monster, Edward descends like an angel about to exterminate evil. He charges in and tells the monster to be reborn as a human instead. As he's about to deal the final blow, a familiar paw grabs him by the wing. From behind, Haru, barely stitched back together, tells the adventurer to stop. Sewing himself back together and regenerating consistently, he says he hasn't been killed yet. The adventurers open their mouths in surprise, unable to understand how he survived. Anima burns with anger, seeing that the zombie is even tougher than he thought. Determined to take it out, he offers another 100 gold coins to finish the job. Looking down at the monster, Edward's interest is piqued by the tenacious opponent. Wanting to hurry things along, Haru interrupts and says there's no need for any more words. The rude and brazen attitude annoys the adventurer, who isn't used to such disrespect. As he raises his blade, so do the 7 saints supporting him. Finally, there's no longer a need to hold back. Minotaur breaks out in cold sweats as the pressure from before manages to get even stronger. He calls on the judgment of the saints and swings down to kill the zombie once and for all. It's the most amount of damage Haru received yet, and the floor bosses cry out, realizing how dangerous the hit he just took was. He falls to the ground, coughing and unable to regenerate, since the skill also deals burning damage per second. At the thought of finally being reunited with his supposed bride, he greets death with a smile. Just then, the purple orb from the Devil King falls out and onto the ground. The force makes it break, activating the sealed spell inside. Turning to see what happened, they find a dense and powerful spirit coming out like a living abyss. The purple orb has fallen to the ground, broken, having released the sealed magic inside. It wraps around Haru, enveloping him in a dark and enigmatic power. Identifying it as the energy of a Devil King, Edward questions what the zombie really is. Meanwhile, Edith senses it as well and pauses her journey to look back. She's surprised that her little friend actually stumbled into a life-threatening situation so soon. Certain that it won't be a problem anymore, she lightly goes back on her way. After all, the orb contained all her strength. Haru emerged as a new being. With him in a near-death state, the Devil King crystal activated. The zombie roared, releasing a pressure that was enough to suffocate anyone nearby. A concentrated beam of magic shot out of his mouth, aimed right at the adventurers. Edward tells the others to run away, but it's far too late for that, as the beam was traveling at a speed they can't follow. The spell hits, and the shockwave is enough to make the dungeon walls shake. While Alice is impressed by her subject, Dorothy asks if it's really a skill meant for a lowly zombie. The dungeon master seconds this, saying even he can't pull off such a move. Looking at his large back, he wonders if Haru is simply a wolf in sheep's clothing. Edward somehow survives the strike. With his armor and wings broken, the valiant adventurer knelt on the floor, acknowledging the zombie's power. If it wasn't for the blessed armor protecting him, he definitely would have died from that. The other adventurers check on him, but he raises his hand, commanding them to stay back. Admitting that he underestimated the opponent, he tells them to run away as he can't fight anymore. Although opinions are mixed, they end up following his instructions and running. Alice refuses to let them go so easily. and says they've been too arrogant this time. She places her hand on the ground and summons a horde of the undead to block their way. The necromancer proudly brags about her true power, but it doesn't last too long. Edward responds and starts an incantation of his own, calling to the Almighty God. A holy light beams down at the horde and burns them into crisps within seconds. It's their chance to run, and Anima takes the lead without even looking back. Fortunately, they manage to make it out alive, although panting from running at full speed. While the worry for Edward is there, the employer says he deserves to die for even failing to take down a lowly zombie. For now, they head back to the city, wanting to find stronger allies to party with. The girl looks back alone, worried about the adventure they left behind. Although she joins her group back to the city, she promises to come back and save him. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, Edward believes enough time has passed to let the humans get away. Dorothy speaks from behind, calling him a truly naive person. He could have saved himself with his remaining power, but instead chose to rescue the others. The adventurer laughs at her, saying monsters like her would never understand. To him, a knight's purpose is to protect those weaker than themselves. It's his fault for being careless and failing to realize that the zombie might be the one with the Devil King's strength. But in his name, he vows to slay them all and stop the menace, even if it costs his life. Once more, he calls to the Almighty God and offers his broken body in exchange for the power to strike. Dorothy asks what move it is, but Minotaur recognizes the Holy Strike. It is a paladin's last resort, sacrificing their life force for a burning blade that even a Devil King won't take head-on. Setting his eyes on his target, Edward charges in to end things once and for all. Without a mind to think, Herd charged in to meet him with a roar. However, his huge paws suddenly revert to their original size, and so does the rest of his body, coincidentally allowing him to dodge the adventurer's last strike. The zombie is out cold on the floor, having passed out from fatigue and overexertion. Edward grits his teeth, not expecting his attack to be dodged so ridiculously. Like the zombie, he falls to the ground, unmoving. Dorothy asks if he died, but the Holy Strike should have cancelled out automatically after missing. The real question now is what they can do to a level 83 adventurer while he's passed out. Alice smugly takes a long rope out and proceeds to tie the unconscious enemy out. Feeling triumphant, she asks the dungeon master for a bonus, while they just envy her foolishness. That said, Minotaur already has a plan for dealing with the adventurer. They all look on in confusion, not knowing what he has in mind. Minotaur places his hand on Alice's shoulder and suddenly gives her responsibility over jailing the adventurer as well as extracting information from him, trying to get out of it. She argues that there's no way a level 35 demon like her could keep an eye on him. Reminded about the rooftop incident and her debt, she quickly accepts the mission without worry. With the commotion all settled, she remembers that there's something important to report. Finally, she relays the information about the Devil King traveling to the human kingdom. The dungeon master breaks out in a cold sweat, already envisioning the intense battle that will take place, as well as the blame that'll be placed on him as the local lord. Since they have to retrieve her immediately, he tries to order the entire dungeon to find her within a week. However, looking around, it quickly becomes obvious that none are fit to work so promptly. He lets it go and accepts their fate, given the terrible state of the entire dungeon after the attack. Dorothy tries to cheer him up, but doing so is easier said than done. It took him centuries to build the dungeon to this scale, and now it'll take centuries to recover. Remembering something, the succubus says it doesn't have to be that way, at least not anymore. She carries the sleeping zombie in her arms and offers it to the master, saying they won't need to worry about injuries with him around. Recalling how she was injured in battle, she goes on about how he treated her wounds so fast. It's an urgent matter since a person who can heal monsters hasn't shown up in 1,000 years. Ignoring Alice's cries, he orders her to wake the zombie up so he can heal the monsters. Dorothy gently wakes the sleeping monster, who asks if he's finally died. He opens his eyes to see the succubus, expressing how worried he had made her. Turning around, he sees the two others staring at him. Finally, he plops to the ground in disappointment and wails about failing to die despite everything he tried. Moreover, the system says he's gained a skill which allows him to do the transformation from before. He complains about another useless skill, making him seem even odder to the onlookers. Minotaur then gets straight to business and confirms that he can heal injured demons. Already worried about what might happen, he steps back and asks why that matters. The master takes his small hand with his fingers and gives a hopeful smile. The two turn to the troops, most of which have been wiped out by the lone invader. Herb sighs with mixed feelings, realizing that he's the only one in the game capable of healing monsters. He agrees to treat everyone there, but says he has one condition they must grant. Surprised that it isn't as simple as it seems, the master asks for what he wants. The zombie then points to Edward and demands to have custody over the adventurer. Though he didn't die, he can at least take his ear and ask him to kill him once he wakes up again. Since he already planned on giving the adventurer to Alice, Minotaur easily accepted the request. With that settled, he tells the former doctor to show them what he can do. As such, Haru walks around for a while to check on each and every monster. As expected, most have sustained serious injuries. Several have knife and burn wounds, which if left untreated would be life-threateningly dangerous. The zombie asks for paper and a pen, which is quickly provided by Dorothy. They watch as he rapidly scribbles a bunch of things down, making sure to be as detailed as possible. Soon enough, he hands them the recipe for treating the wounds and instructs them to brew the medicine. It doesn't even matter if they don't know the ingredients, as he's described them in great detail. Hearing them question him, he acts haughty and asks if they dare doubt his medical skills. With that settled, he moves on to the issue of the adventurer's gear. Claiming it all is his, he takes all the armor off in a matter of seconds and wears them all on his body. However, upon checking his stats, he sees that nothing has changed at all. Sulking around, he asks Alice for an explanation and gets called a clueless little zombie. Even if he equips high-level items when his level is insufficient, any stat bonuses will be void. Her words pierce through him like arrows. With that option gone, all he can do now is wait for Edward to wake up and kill him. Speaking of which, he turns to the adventurer, realizing that there was something odd while he was taking the armor. Now lying on the ground, it's revealed that the top adventurer was a woman all along. A huge fire razes a town to the ground, leading nothing but a devastating trail of death. Demons raged on, wreaking havoc and killing civilians as they pleased. Meanwhile, a little girl had to witness all this, watching as she hid behind closed doors. Unfortunately, this wasn't enough to hide her from the demon attacking their home. He finds the stray survivor and opens the door, revealing the terrified child trembling on the ground. Raising his hand, he tells her to join the others on her way into the afterlife. As she desperately raised her arms in an attempt to protect herself, the poor little girl cried out one last time. Edward's eyes bolted open as she woke up from the devastating nightmare. Seeming to be bound to a contraption, she curses the monster who haunts her sleep. Haru stepped forward, noticing that she was finally awake. The zombie is wearing a doctor's white coat and says she's been asleep and skirting death for 3 days. First asking why she's there, she belatedly realizes that she's strapped in some kind of cross with barely any clothes on. Recalling the armor he had no use for, the zombie says he tossed it aside and is probably in the hands of a monster. She curses him hard, gritting her teeth in nothing but anger toward the despicable creature. Tears well in her eyes, she tells him to kill her instead of humiliating her like that. To her surprise, he jumps to her face, telling her to keep quiet and hear him out if she wants to live. With no other choice, she allows him to sit on her shoulder and asks about his real plan. He says there's no plan and that he just genuinely wants to help her. Moreover, he can't explain why, but he'll secretly treat her injuries and even help her escape once she's well. Edward refuses to listen, believing monsters can't heal humans, which is within Haru's expectations. For that, he's prepared a salve for external wounds in advance. Telling her not to move around too much, he applied it to a wound around her chest, and she's surprised to see it work right away. It's cool and soothing, and the pain is easing up remarkably fast. Considering his terrifying power and now his unbelievable healing skill, she thinks something must be up. It's too complicated to explain, so he asks that they brush it off as an exchange for a favor. Already expecting a catch, she asks what he wants her to do. He starts off with an eerie voice, and against all her expectations, he cries on the floor while begging her to kill him. Still wailing, he says he's had enough of the dungeon and doesn't want to be a zombie anymore. Running around, he absent-mindedly apologizes for being born as a zombie. He then moves on and asks why she's been pretending to be a man all this time. It's her turn to avoid questions, so she dismisses it altogether, albeit with a pained expression. Not bothered enough to pry, he tries to continue with the treatment instead. As he's about to apply the salve, Alice's voice calls to him from outside, and he quickly has to think of something. The necromancer arrives at the room and finds Haru clinging to Edward, bashfully asking why she isn't helping treat the injured. If she were to find out about the zombie's true intentions, healing the adventurer will only become challenging. The boss says he's being called for a reward as the dungeon master was impressed by his remedy. Finally noticing something odd, she wonders why he's leaning over the bound adventurer so sneakily. Quickly putting on a sleazy expression, he says he's using a vile method to interrogate her. However, it still seems too suspicious for the surprisingly sharp necromancer. She tugs on him, demanding to know what he's hiding. but he just clings to the adventurer harder. He can't allow Alice to see the salve in his hand, so he urgently shoves the bottle in the captive's chest binding. He finally lets go, smugly saying that there had nothing to hide at all. She notices the blushing adventurer's uneven chest, but he says it must just be swelling from battle. Haru then shows her away, saying the dungeon master must be waiting for her. As he confirms that she's actually left, he sighs after dodging the bullet. Turning to Edward, he then apologizes for resorting to desperate measures without her permission. He says this, but proceeds to brashly take the bottle out again. Since he's near her, Haru notices the piece of jewelry around her neck and immediately reaches out. She tries to warn him against it, but it's too late as he's already taken hold. As soon as his skin touches the cold metal, the zombie immediately bursts into blazing flames. Within a matter of seconds, he falls to the floor, completely scorched while still holding the pendant. Edward screams out, panicking over the sudden turn of events. Seeing Haru pass out from the flames, Edward urgently tries to check on his condition. The pendant he held is a holy cross, which is strong enough to turn a common undead into ashes. As he remains unmoving, she wonders if he had actually died so abruptly. Just then, the zombie stood up like nothing happened. Since he's her last hope for escape, she urges him to let go of the cross to prevent him from dying. Her expression goes from worried to confused as he speaks of a great discovery. He beams while looking at the amazing item, which is dealing enough damage to counteract his healing. With this, his regeneration is cancelled out, making his self-destructive antics much more possible. What's even better is how it boosts his MP by 1,000 points, giving him access to stronger spells. Brought by emotions over getting the perfect item for him, the zombie even attempts to hug the adventurer. He moves on with his plan and begins removing her shackles. Aside from allowing her to apply the medicine on her own, it's also his way of thanking her for the item. He's already put the ointment away for her, and now she just has to make sure to stay away from monsters. Hearing this, she shudders at the thought of where the bottle might be. As expected, she feels a hard bump on her chest, making her scream at him in protest. Meanwhile, at the Lord's palace, monsters moved busily despite being bandaged from injuries. Just like the master mentioned, the losses for the dungeon are considerably severe. Finally arriving at Minotaur's throne, he's welcomed for the audience. Alice scolds him for taking so long, saying they've been waiting since she called him earlier. To start things off, the master expresses his gratitude, but admits that he still has many unanswered questions. He outright asks about his ability to heal monsters, making him flinch in surprise. Dorothy adds on, explaining how he's the first to manage, since demon healing was sealed a millennium ago. The idea that they don't know how to make their own medicine shocks him. Herbs from the human realm don't work on them, but surprisingly, his personal concoctions are effective. Silently, he wonders if the healing seal only works on this world, rendering his Earth's remedies untouched. Due to their lack of healing, they were forced to retreat into the dungeons, leaving their strength to wane. Now with his medicinal capabilities, they've gained a new means for sustained combat. Not really inclined to fight humankind, Haru makes an excuse and reasons that they need a long-term strategy. The master agrees, unable to deny that a sea-level dungeon alone can't challenge the human kingdom. As such, he suggests having the Devil King herself hold the fort for them. He and Dorothy pile on the idea, already imagining how this would bring them glory among the lesser monsters. Progressing surprisingly fast, he has already decided on the matter of who's going to fetch the king. He surprises everyone by announcing that the succubus and necromancer are assigned the task. The protests from the two come immediately, and Minotaur calmly orders them to stop arguing. He explains that they are the most humanoid-looking demons there, and would likely blend in better. Despite the logical reasoning, the two continue to fight while Haru judges them from behind. Thinking about it for a while, he realizes that it's the perfect opportunity for his plans. If he goes into the human kingdom with them, it will be much easier to risk his life at every turn. As they're arguing, he brightly raises his hand for attention and expresses his desire to join them. It's quickly rejected on the ground that he looks too much like a monster to blend in. Having expected this, he gives them a show of his new abilities and starts to cast a spell. They look on in surprise and intrigue. In a matter of seconds, Haru emerges with a human form, albeit still with zombie-like qualities. With his current MP, such small skills are no problem for him. They fawn over his new form, accepting it despite the feat supposedly being impossible for common zombies. He asks again, now certain that he should be allowed to enter the human realm. After a moment of silence, the master sighs and decides to answer him honestly. More than his appearance, he refuses to send him away since he has a task more important in store. As the zombie looks on in confusion, he continues, all the dungeon bosses were severely injured by Edward's attack, and Lilith is still out of commission. As such, he's decided to appoint him as the new floor boss. Considering his contributions to their race, Gracefully reaching out, Minotaur asks if he'll accept the position. For a moment, Haru awkwardly looks at the master's hand and, to everyone's surprise, slaps it away as he declines the offer. Being a floor boss would waste all his death-seeking time and leave him locked in the dungeon. The two ladies ask him to reconsider, as such a position would bring him several benefits. With charming skills rivaling a succubus, he brings the two into his arms and says he couldn't let them face danger while he's away from harm. Thinking about his old life, he says he's always wanted to say something as cool and cliche as that. Moreover, he assures the master that there's no need to worry about the 6th floor boss. Taking a few tools out, he reminds them that he's the dungeon's immortal healer. As the zombie is so intent on going to the human realm, Minotaur gives him a chance to prove himself. Speaking to his subjects, he calls for Lilith to be brought into the room. With this, the vampire queen is delivered, still unconscious and lying in her coffin. While it might not be the most ethical thing, Haru decides to use her for his experiment. Preparing for the treatment, he gathers magic into his hand. With green mist swirling around him, he places his palm over the vampire's chest. The system chimes in, reporting failure and explaining that he cannot heal monsters. It's within his expectations, but he still just wanted to confirm things before giving up. They ask if she can still be saved, and he assures them that there won't be a problem. She's always been anemic, and because of the recent battle, she's all the more in need of a transfusion. They worriedly look at each other, knowing they can't easily provide the resources he needs. Since he's a recent summoning, they understand that he might be out of the loop with things. To monsters, anything related to their bodily function is precious, ever since their ability to heal was sealed. Surprisingly, the zombie chuckles and brightly says that there's no issue with this at all. If it's so precious, then he'll just quickly whips them up. To their shock and awe, he casts a huge magic circle on the ground and calls forth a summoning. It's a ridiculously high-level spell, and Dorothy comments that it essentially renders Alice useless. With this, the zombie completes his first summoning and calls forth the Bat Pig. An odd creature appears and, with a determined expression, asks its master for a command. Seeing a level 5 zombie cast a spell meant for level 40, Minotaur can't help but be impressed. The Bat Pig is called over. Haru, despite hiding a huge syringe behind him, asks for a favor, saying there's no need to be scared. Without any warning, he inserts it into the monster's arm, making it tear up from the jolt of pain. Unable to hold it in, it makes the castle echo with screams of pain. Soon after, the poor thing is left lying on the floor, and its master happily brings the full syringe over. While he looked like a cute zombie at first, they're convinced that his ruthlessness better fits a demon. Storing it in a vial, Haru tells the master to inject it into Lilith's body when the time comes. Once she wakes up, they also have to follow her prescription, which will work wonders for her anemia. With all loose ends tied up, he receives permission to accompany them into the human kingdom. Minotaur gives him a final reminder that his safety comes first, regardless of the mission's success. Like a parent allowing their child into the world for the first time, he calls them their beacon of hope. He puts on a show and pretends to be moved, despite maintaining his original intention of dying out there. With all that settled, they waste not another moment and get right to moving. The party of 3 packs their bags and leaves the castle to find the Devil King. As they're walking in the forest, the two fall into panic as Haru suddenly falls to the ground, reverting to his old form. Carrying him in her arms, Dorothy asks what happened and if he's okay. He says he just burned too much MP and has fallen into a state of exhaustion. As he's lost his human form, Alice worries about their chances of sneaking into the kingdom. He assures them that he's okay and just needs a bit more time to regain his energy. Fulfilling his own desires, he hugs the succubus back and nuzzles in her body. Blushing Dorothy allows him to just lie there and soak up on much-needed rest. In that comfortable moment, he was happy to be in another world. Meanwhile, deeper into the forest, a campfire lit the night sky. A whole chicken was being roasted over the flames, and 3 familiar brothers thoroughly enjoyed their dinner. Lewis worries about fulfilling their quota as they promise the black market a succubus for the market. The 2 younger ones fall silent, suddenly serious as they're unable to think of anything to do. They can't just go back with Haru still in the dungeon, so Sham suggests trying a different approach. Since their bosses want eye-catching slaves, they can just grab a few pretty women off the street. Normally, it would be too risky with Imperial guards patrolling the area, ready to arrest them. However, the forest is still far from the border town, and away from wherever the guards patrol. Just then, he tenses up after hearing some noise nearby. Telling the others to quiet down, he says someone is walking in their direction. Wanting to assess the situation first, they poke their heads out of a bush to check who it is. As luck would have it, they come across the type of girls that are perfect for their mission. They watch a couple of familiar silhouettes from nearby and are mesmerized by their perfect figures. Failing at first to recognize the 4 bosses, they set out to capture the 2 without fail. The 3 brothers hurry up, unwilling to let their targets escape as they're chasing a quota. Meanwhile, a bad feeling travels up Alice's spine, making her shiver in the dark. Urgently looking around, she says she feels a few eyes watching them, but Dorothy says she's being paranoid. On the other hand, Haru left them alone for a while to visit the restroom, saying he had a sudden stomach ache. As she questions if the undead even have to make bathroom trips, a voice loudly called to them, ordering the women to stop in their tracks. The 3 adventurers appear out of nowhere, striking tacky poses paired with rehearsed introductory lines. An awkward moment of silence passes as the 2 ladies are unable to react to the foolish display. Suddenly, the 3 gather and whisper, finally realizing that their targets look eerily familiar. The eldest calls them fools and explains that they're the bosses they encountered in the dungeon. Well aware the demons aren't supposed to be out and about, they feel something is wrong. Regardless of the reason, it's the perfect opportunity to capture, so the eldest gets right to work. He draws his bow and arrow, imbuing it with magic just as he did before. However, Dorothy is prepared this time and won't allow herself to fall for the same thing twice. She strikes first, quickly firing an enchanting arrow at the archer. Balls of mana shoot at Lewis and break the sharp tip of his projectile. Unfortunately, it doesn't work the way she intended, as the broken tip accidentally hits Alice's head instead. Successfully attached to the target, the spell activates and the hypertoxic vions grow from her forehead. In a matter of seconds, the 2 ladies are bound and rendered helpless once more. Dorothy scolds her companion, who's barely in her right mind, blaming her for getting them trapped. The adventurers chuckle and mock them, asking if dungeon bosses really are so weak. To finish things off, Sham gathers energy into his wand and casts a giant fireball. A meteor-like ball of fire falls from above, illuminating the night sky. With one look, the succubus knows they've lost. Meanwhile, another fire spell is cast, but a much weaker one targeting a little rabbit. Haru takes the fallen creature, disappointed that the strongest skill he can use is still too weak. He thinks there are no decent monsters to experiment on, oblivious that he's scared them into hiding. While he's finally found an excuse to cause chaos, he decides to wait until they enter the kingdom. Just then, the commotion reaches him, and he turns around to see a gigantic explosion nearby. This gets him all excited, so he rushes to the scene. Back to where the adventurers are, the 2 ladies are shown to have taken a direct hit from the fire spell. With burns all over their bodies, Dorothy struggles to move and curses herself for losing to them again. Assured of their victory, the brothers get devious smiles on their faces. As the 2 younger ones celebrate, expecting a huge bounty, the eldest tells them not to be so hasty. Blushing and heaving hard, he says he should enjoy things first before they proceed to the sale. In full support, they grab the succubus arms and pull up, leaving her defenseless with no chance of rescue. Attempting to stall for Haru's return, Dorothy suggests starting with Alice first, as she's also a beauty. Curious, they look back upon hearing this and see the ridiculous-looking woman on the ground. The succubus curses her for being useless, even in times like this. Finally, letting their desires take over, Lewis pounces at her, but a voice commands them to stop. A big fireball is cast and hits the adventurer square in the chest, sending him flying away with a blast of flames. The younger ones let go of Dorothy and rush to their injured brother's side. Asking if he's okay, they turn to look at whoever ambushed them with a cheap spell. Haru greets them, owning up to the attack with a smile. That said, he is still disappointed and dissatisfied with his spell's strength. His focus changes as someone calls from behind. Dorothy hugs the zombie tight, saying he has to beat them up and avenge her. He protests at first, but enjoys the soft hug nonetheless. Lewis inspects the enemy's characteristics and informs the others that he's just a level 5 zombie. Encouraged upon hearing this, Pitt steps forward and charges in with a huge holy shield. Haru recognizes the danger and pushes Dorothy away to safety. The adventurer says it's too late to regret picking a fight and slams the shield hard into the zombie's back. His eyes open wide, feeling an uncanny sense of familiarity. Just then, as if his insides were mashed, a reverberating shock spread throughout his body. Similar to how he fell before, he takes a knee, suffering from the reflected damage of his attack. Haru sighs in exasperation, saying he had already warned them a long time ago. As he reminds them of his reflective tendency toward physical attacks, they finally realize that he's the small zombie. Looking as though he had been conned, Lewis points at his enemy, saying he was that zombie all along. Satisfied with the perplexed reaction, Haru smiles and reverts to his original form, surprising them even more. Sham panics and asks for what to do next. but it's so obvious that it shouldn't even be asked. Together, the two run, leaving their injured youngest behind and crying for help. Returning to his human form, the zombie chuckles and calls them naive. In an instant, he appears right next to the fleeing men, saying they can't outrun him in that form. They face each other for a tense moment, and after quickly weighing their options, the two brothers kneel and bow their heads, begging for their lives to be spared. They plead with their situation, listing the people they need to provide for. During this, the younger brother inadvertently reveals a shocking secret and apologizes to the eldest. After freezing from shock, Louis realizes what happened and grabs his brother by the collar, leaving the zombie to watch awkwardly. He tells them to stop with the comedy routine and shares that he never intended to kill them. The two stop punching for a while and hear him out. To their surprise, Haru says he wants them to kill them instead. Now that the effects of his automatic healing are countered, they should be able to take him out. Looking at each other, the adventurers consider it for a moment and jump high with their weapons to grant the request. One barrages him with a rain of fire, while the other concentrates his power into a magic arrow. They hit the zombie directly, taking more than half his health away in one go. Almost flying back, he smiles, as it's been a while since he last felt such pain. Dorothy sees him take the attacks and calls out. From the looks of it, she knows he's trying to get himself killed on purpose again, since he isn't fighting back at all. Sham says they might actually complete the mission this time. However, Louis suddenly falls to the ground, scarily silent. The damage from his physical arrow is reflected, and he feels the sharp pain deep in his chest. With this, the eldest brother falls, leaving the middle child as the last man standing. He looks back at the succubus with a filthy expression, saying that capturing her is all up to him now. Haru whines and urges him to deliver the final blow, but the man refuses for now, asking what the rush is. Killing the zombie would be easy, but he has more important things to do now, mainly concerning Dorothy. He asks the adventurer about his intentions, but it isn't even a question at this point. He attaches a metal collar around her neck, saying he's going to turn her into his slave. A high-quality succubus like her would be worth around 20 normal humans, especially for depraved masters. Still, he thanks the zombie for his assistance. They had already lost hope, but with refusing to fight, they managed to succeed in the end. He assures the zombie that there's no need to worry and that he'll kill him afterward. But before that, there are better things to do. Shamlun is at Dorothy, saying it's time to inspect his goods. The succubus screams for help, begging Haru to jump in and save her like always. As the adventurer reached out, the zombie suddenly got up and stood between them. Unable to stop due to the momentum, Sham's hand, poised to grab, reaches and squeezes something else. He gags and jumps back in surprise, disgusted over what he just touched. He scolds Haru for getting in the way, reminding him that he asked to die in the first place. Feigning charisma, the zombie says it's just natural for monsters to trick humans. Although acting cool, he shakes, unable to stand firm as he's still reeling from being grabbed. Since he doesn't want to put his companions at risk, he decides to die in a more secure situation. Shem is so furious over getting interrupted that he's regained enough confidence to fight the zombie. He casts a giant fireball and is ready to cast, but before he could do so, Haru prepares an attack of his own. Lightning gathers in his palms and, as if calling it from the heavens, shoots it from the sky. The blast hits directly, leaving Sham unconscious and stunned from electrocution. Louis is watching, having barely regained his senses, and curses the monster. As he's wondering if he wants to fight again, the eldest gathers his brothers and carries them all to escape. Haru is certain that they'll cause trouble again sooner or later, and wants to finish them off. Unfortunately, the fight took too much of a toll on his body, and he dropped back down into his original form. Neither strength nor MP is left in him, so he just lies there completely spent. He asks for someone to help him up, but upon turning to the women, he sees both of them knocked out for various reasons. The zombie desperately screams for help, but it's not until Alice, who was poisoned by vines and hit by a fireball, wakes up that he is saved. The brothers run as fast and far away as possible. They eventually stop, certain that they're safe, but still can't believe that monsters are out of the dungeon. Asking their eldest for their next move, the two are simply told to head to the border town for now. While the others worry about completing their mission, he assures them that it'll be a walk in the park. Like a bunch of fools, they decide to return to their old method of snatching random girls in the street. A while later, Alice picks Haru up by his coat. Her face is filled with anger as she asks why he didn't shield her, but he argues that he didn't see the spell. To appease her frustration, he takes some burn ointment out and tells her to help herself. She moves right along, pats his body down, urgently looking for the medicine as instructed. Feeling good, he plays around, telling her to be careful with where she touches, but she just scolds him for acting indecent. Fortunately, she eventually finds the salve and spreads it across her burns. He swears on its effectiveness, even bragging about brilliantly concocting it himself. Just then, someone tells them to hold on the chit-chat for when they reach the city. It's Dorothy, tells them to free her from the collar, with embarrassment written all over her face. Alice laughs at her peer's helpless state and mockingly says that she must need assistance. Taking full advantage of the opportunity, she piles on, asking her to beg. As the necromancer is cursed, she takes offense and drags Haru away, intending to leave the succubus there. Biting her lips and blushing, Dorothy grumbles, barely managing to say that she's asking a favor. Unable to meet her eyes, she pleads for rescue. Satisfied and having gotten what she wanted, Alice grants her request and orders the zombie to help. Haru quickly breaks the chains, earning the demon's gratitude. She lets her charm work once more, expressing how touched she is that he saved her earlier. Coming close, she ignores the necromancer's cries and kisses the zombie on the lips. She gives a sly wink after, saying it's a little reward for earlier. As Alice keeps protesting, Dorothy finally turns her attention to her, burning with rage at the memory of her earlier antics. Asked if she had fun teasing, she apologizes without question. While the brazen girl gets punished for her sins, the system pops up for Haru. It's a lucky buff, which grants random buffs for an hour after getting close to a beauty. As he whines over another useless skill, the succubus calls him over, having finished with Alice's ordeal. The next day, at the border town, the winding road finally comes to an end. The three fall to the ground, exhausted from the long journey. Before hitting the city, Haru decides that it's best to change his look now and cast his transformation spell. It is as mesmerizing as it always is, and Dorothy clings to him right away, fawning over his attractive appearance. Because of her coming close, the lucky buff activates, granting him 100 extra defense points. As a final note, he reminds them to call him by his name in the city, and not his little zombie. They eventually reach the gates and are greeted by a long line. The inspections at the border seem quite strict, but their disguises should be enough to get through. Soon after, they're called up to the front for review. While Haru gives a sheepish smile, the two ladies hide behind him. Noting how they're unfamiliar, the guard asks for their purpose and is told that they're just passing merchants. If he exposes himself there, the ladies will get dragged into the mess, so he needs to secure entry. With a general look, the man says they don't seem to be evildoers, much to their relief. However, tries to take Alice's robe off, blushing as he attempts to take a closer look. Haru grabs his wrists, asking that he refrain from indecent acts as both women are his wives. Insulted, the men pick a fight, saying they must be looking for trouble to defy them like that. Taking drastic measures, the zombie shows his magic off to threaten them, sharing that he's a battle mage on top of being a merchant. With this, they're reluctantly let in to avoid trouble. After walking a few meters in, Haru lets out a sigh of relief, glad that they actually made it through. That said, it's odd to encounter such scrutiny at the gates, and it shouldn't normally be this way. However, the reason for such restrictions makes itself clear soon enough. On the walls, countless wanted posters are plastered, naming Edith as the most wanted criminal worth 30,000 gold coins. They scream in disbelief, saying it's far too exposed. It's the first time they actually see the Devil King's appearance, and her wanted posters are all over town. Her identity has been exposed, but at least she hasn't been captured yet. As the only serious one in the group, Dorothy emphasizes how important it is to find her immediately. Unfortunately, her companions are too busy going around town, entranced by the various stores. Quickly punishing both, he drags the two stubborn companions in front of everyone, telling them to focus. Tossing them into a dark alley, the succubus lets her anger out and orders them to think of a solution. Since it's a searching mission, Alice gets all confident and tells them to leave things to her. Their expression turns grim as she shares her plan to search the entire town by summoning a horde of zombies. They express their disappointment over believing her for a moment, so she tells them to figure it out themselves. Since every human city has taverns holding information, Haru suggests checking there first. Delighted by the idea, Dorothy clings to him, saying he really is the cleverest one there. She kisses him again, on the cheek this time, calling it a reward for doing so. Annoyed, Alice orders her zombie to attack the succubus, so Haru shoots a fireball at her head. Resuming their journey, they notice people looking at them despite their disguises. Both ladies are beaten up from the altercation, but Dorothy's hair has gone particularly frizzy from the heat. If this keeps up, their identities will be revealed before they can even find the Devil King. As much as he wants to be exposed and killed, doing so haphazardly would endanger the women. They heard that there's a tavern with a quest board from the guild nearby, so they decide to head there for now. From outside, they can already hear the conversation about Edward being defeated by a zombie, Anima's party is there, trying their best to convince the adventurers that it's true, no matter how unbelievable it is, as they insist that they saw the top adventurer lose with their own eyes. Haru and the others open the door. He can't believe that they would run into them of all people. They decide to leave after staying for a bit longer, but the tavern keeper notices them walking around. He calls them over and the three freeze in their tracks. The man asks if they're there to take on a quest or have a few drinks. Given the circumstances, it's better to avoid attention, but Alice raises her hand, saying they want to gather intel. As he feared, their old enemies notice their presence, although failing to recognize them for now. If their identities are discovered, Haru decides to sacrifice himself to give them a chance to escape. While following the keeper, the adventurers finally pinpoint why they look familiar. Anima doesn't hesitate and calls out, ordering them to stop immediately, saying they resemble monsters from the dungeon. He says he finds them suspicious, since they haven't seen his human form. Haru plays it off, arguing that monsters don't venture into human settlements. Another man chimes in saying it isn't necessarily the case, recalling how a high-level monster recently appeared in town, and has now caused a citywide manhunt. The zombie realizes that he's talking about Udith. The master adds on, saying monsters have come prepared after avoiding humans for hundreds of years. As such, they're offering a couple hundred gold coins for those willing to investigate. Unwilling to be fooled, Anima shouts again, telling them not to change the subject. Suspecting them to be the two-level bosses from the dungeon, he orders them to take their hoods off. They stay silent and unmoving, knowing the repercussions that might follow. Since they're refusing to comply, Anima forgoes his manners and starts to charge at them. Haru wonders if it's time to step in and take action, but Alice calmly reaches out, saying it's okay to show them what's under. The two women take their hoods off, asking that they stop looking for trouble after seeing them. Everyone gives an audible gasp, saying the sight is far too ugly for the eyes. Under the hoods are the women's faces, still swollen and beaten up from the fight they had earlier. Haru finally sighs in relief, glad that the foolish sometimes manage to find their luck. Still checking, Anima cautiously asks about their boss. The other members chime in, recalling that the two they're looking for are always with the bratty zombie. Although surprised by the unexpected description, Haru plays it off, saying they don't have anyone bratty with them. Disappointed, the party goes on their way, asking to be informed in case any powerful adventurers come by. Now that the immediate danger has passed, he turns to the owner, ready to talk about serious matters. With a smile, he asks about the monster who entered the border town. With a troubled face, the man tells the story of the monster from 3 days ago. They were in the tavern, and it was just as lively as always when someone suddenly came in. Edith, who obviously was not from there, entered with a bang, asking for the most interesting place in town. Being hospitable, the owner asked what she meant by interesting, wanting to give the best recommendation. It doesn't take much time for her to ask for some delicious food, which they coincidentally offer right there. As their dishes are famous throughout the city, he guarantees that she'll be more than satisfied. Convinced, the Devil King readily orders one of everything they have in the tavern. While she smiles innocently, everyone gasps at the ridiculous request, but to their surprise, she eats everything off cleanly. Taking a few more bites of noodles, she exclaimed in delight, confirming that the flavors are indeed amazing. After one last bite, she burps and sighs in complete satisfaction. The owner asks if it was all to her liking, and she gladly gives the dishes her seal of approval, adding that she's never tasted such things before. With that said, the time to settle the bill has come, where she just obliviously asks what a bill is. An awkward silence passes as the owner tries to comprehend what she's saying. Fury takes over, and he flexes his surprisingly large muscles, asking if she intends to dine and dash in his establishment. The people talk, recalling how he was once a level 70 golden armored champion. In other words, he isn't someone you can haphazardly insult and leave dry. A man then steps up and calls Edith, obviously not up to any good. With a despicable face, he offers to pay for her bill if she agrees to be his servant. As she remains silent, he takes it as a yes to his offer and attempts to put a collar on her neck. Unfortunately, his entire arm is blown off, severed before he could even register what happened. He screams in pain, and people look on in awe, not even seeing her move to attack. The proud owner then began to tremble, partly in amazement and partly in fear. The Devil King's horns were revealed, and her aura alone was enough to strike fear in their hearts. With a furious glint in her eyes, she says the guy ruined her good mood. Asked if there are any other spots to visit, the owner turns back to his meek self and gives a few recommendations. He describes the attractions on both the east and west side, much to Edith's delight. With this, she heads off to her next destination, with the people clearing her path completely. Holding a bag of coins in her hand, she passes by the man who bothered her and tosses the bag into the owner's arms as payment. After settling everything, she goes out the door and gives one last smile before waving goodbye. When they're sure that she's out, they scream and declare that a monster has entered the town. They inform the lord of the land, who promptly offered a hefty reward for her disposal. Unfortunately, they haven't seen the Devil King since and don't know if she's still in town. Understanding the situation well, Haru asks if he can buy a copy of the border town map. They complete the transaction, and he thanks the owner for helping them out with information. Dorothy suggests heading east to follow the Devil King, but he tells her to slow down as there's no need to rush. Their search is like looking for a needle in a haystack, so it'd be better to split up and search separately. Although they don't know where the Devil King is exactly, they're bound to uncover clues somehow. With that settled, Haru sets out and leads the group to their next destination. Like a true leader, he nags at them, reminding the two about keeping their identities a secret and working together. The three go their separate ways, and a smile spreads across the zombie's face. He prances around the town like a crazy person, elated that he's free to throw himself into danger again. Loving the idea of seeking death once more, he heads to a spot he's had his eyes on. As he thought, the perfect destination before him is the Holy Cathedral. The undead man cautiously walks through the front door, where he hears a woman's voice praying. Inside, he sees a beautiful nun, who welcomes him, asking if he needs the help of the divine. Sparkling with purity, a holy maiden welcomes Haru and asks if she can somehow assist the lost boy. The zombie staggers back while blushing, unable to believe how beautiful the woman before him is. He shakes his head hard, reminding himself that it isn't the time to think about such things. Holy magic has special effects against the undead, so being purified by her could definitely lead to his death. Excited, he giddily raises his hand, saying he'll be straightforward with his request. He honestly shares how he's a zombie who doesn't want to live anymore, and wishes to be purified to death. Not knowing how to react to such a statement, the saintess' silence fills the room. She then giggles brightly, making him blush in embarrassment. Wiping her tears off, she apologizes for what he said was simply too funny to bear. While she grew up in the church and never left town, she at least knows that monsters can't leave the dungeon. Frustrated, he decides to outright show her irrefutable proof instead. He deactivates his transformation and reverts to his zombie self, asking if it's enough to make her believe his words. However, the maiden just smiles kindly, not giving the reaction he expected at all. When he asks why he isn't the slightest bit surprised, she apologizes. Since her birth, her eyes have never seen anything, and even now she has no idea how she looks. Taken aback by the sudden revelation, he apologizes for the rude question, but she's already used to it. Even though she can't see, she does have insight, which gives her the ability to see souls. Taking a closer look at him, she's sure that there are no evil intentions from him at all. Embarrassed and blushing, he insists that he's an evil monster, making her think that he's joking again. Since she still refuses to believe his claims, he resorts to more drastic measures to convince her. In an instant, he zooms around and passes her. While she doesn't see it, she feels that something has changed and gathers her hands by her legs. The maiden drops to the floor as the devious zombie raises a white piece of cloth high up. Having stolen the woman's inner clothes, he wears it over his head mockingly. He comes close with a sinister smile, goading her to hurry up and purify the evil inside him. However, all she does is tear up and question what experiences could lead a kind boy to do such things. True to how naive she is, the saintess prays to her god, hoping that her clothes somehow save the boy. Asked once more to purify him, she argues she as a candidate saint would never hurt the Empire's people. The frustration inside him builds up, and he asks how he can make her believe that he's evil. Unfortunately for him, she only believes in what she can perceive. Giving a resigned sigh, he acknowledges that all he can do now is let her see his actual state. The zombie turns back into a human, needing a more convenient form for what he's about to do. Realizing that the garment was still worn around his head, he's filled with regret. Quickly pocketing the item, he reaches out and asks to see the maiden's hand for a moment. He takes her wrist and pokes, looking for her pulse points. Confused, she asks what he's doing, but doesn't pull her hand away. The woman is told to keep quiet for now as he's currently treating her ailment. Determined to be seen as a monster, he's set out to heal her eyes and restore her sense of sight. At least once he does that, she should believe him. She asks that he doesn't waste his time. The Lord alone can bring miracles. However, he isn't even sure about such gods, but is certain in the abilities of a healer like himself. Based on his examination, she can't see because she was born with blocked meridians, pressing on her optic nerve. As long as his medical needles clear those meridians, the ailment should be cured right away. Finishing up, he confidently turns back and tells her to open her eyes and check on her vision. Lifting the garment on her head, the maiden cautiously takes a peek, opening one eye at a time. To her surprise, it's not all smoke and darkness anymore, but a blurry image of her savior, Haru. He smiles at her, saying she now knows how amazing of a doctor he is. However, she confuses him, saying it isn't because he's a doctor. The maiden suddenly clings to his leg and insists that he must be the avatar of God himself. According to the bishop, only the Lord would be able to heal her eyes, and yet he did it so easily. The misunderstanding strikes him, and he doesn't understand how things came to this. For now, he asks that they talk about lordship later and tells her to stop clinging to his leg already. It seems she hasn't fully recovered her sight yet, as she thought she was holding his arm. Just then, a priest entered the church and opened his eyes in shock upon seeing the scene in front of him. The scene could very well be misinterpreted by others, so he runs out and immediately screams that a thug had violated the maiden, sending the church into an uproar. The priest who walked in on Haru and the maiden rushed out, announcing that he had assaulted her. Hearing this, the civilians nearby fell into complete uproar, furious that their lady had been defiled. People pile on even more, saying the holy saintess is about to be ravished to death. As such, they storm the church, determined to save her and punish the man who disrespects them. The maiden puts herself between Haru and the people, defending him and saying it was all her choice. While they refuse to believe her, the zombie smiles, finding the encounter fortunate and a perfect opportunity. Without any warning whatsoever, he reaches out and grabs her body in front of everyone. They're stunned at his brazen move, but he just pokes harder, saying she's completely under his control. He asks if they want to save her, and says they will have to kill him first to do so. Balling their fists, they get ready to do just that, filled with anger and disgust for the inhuman man. They all jumped in together, determined to give him a proper beating. They come, and he welcomes them with open arms, not at all fighting back despite the countless punches, scratches, and hits he receives. He relishes in the pain, smiling as he feels like he is inching closer to his goal by the second. However, the maiden cried out, begging everyone to stop what they were doing. She tugged on an arm, trying to pull the zombie to safety. Closing her eyes in earnest effort, she tries to convince everyone that it's all just a misunderstanding. A voice close to her cautiously called, and she slowly opened her eyes to see. To her surprise, the man she was pulling on was a different person, not her savior. Moving on, she screams again, repeating that she's fine and that they should all stop beating Haru. Finally convinced, as it came from the maiden herself, the townsfolk stop and let him go. She then rushes to check on the injured zombie, who was bruised but loudly complaining about the inkling of damage they were able to inflict on him. Delighted that he's all okay, she rejoices and says his magnificence knows no bounds. To protect her honor, he even accepted humiliation and pain from the citizens earlier. Likening him to a different lord, the saintess puts his divinity and self-sacrifice on a pedestal. He can only look at her with pity, unable to comprehend how imaginative and naive she is. When he insists that he isn't a god, even giving a human name, she insists that it must be his disguise. Believing this, she agrees to call him by his name, but with a holy suffix before it. Sighing in resignation, he tells her to do whatever she wants. Again moving the conversation back on track, he tells her to purify him already, but is refused once more. She asks how she could dare to accept his blessings when it would be a great sign of disrespect. He nonchalantly promises to forgive her and orders the maiden to hurry up. Convinced, she put her hands together and prayed to the deity, calling in the name of their devoted follower. Turning the cross toward Haru, she asks for the divine power of purity to cleanse the world of all chaos. He winces as the sacred light scorches his entire being, and he can feel his soul on the brink of purification. She calls to him, but he's too preoccupied and satisfied to notice that his zombie appearance was melting away with the light. Soon after, the purification ends, and he's back on the ground. As he's there, likely wondering why he's still alive, the system shows a notice, saying his racial talent has been mutated due to the purification. Now, when struck by divine attacks, he grows stronger and increases his health. Feeling hopeless after getting even farther from his goal, he rolls around complaining. To comfort him, the maiden held his shoulders and pulled him up. She might not fully understand what's troubling him, but hopes that her sincere faith can wrap him in warmth. As she hugs him from behind, the lucky color skill activates, temporarily boosting his defense. Feeling mocked, he scolds the system. After a while, he gets back up feeling much better and says staying there any longer is just a waste of time. Looking up at him with a perplexed expression, she asks where he's headed. He's lost all his leads and no longer has any idea if there's anyone there who can take him down. While he's walking away, the maiden suddenly raises her voice and asks if he could possibly take her along. She grew up in the church from a young age and has never laid eyes on the world beyond its walls. Now that her eyes have healed, she wishes to place her faith in him and stay by his side. He blushes, stifling a laugh. While her words have touched his heart, he tells her, whose vision is still unclear, not to talk to the pillar. Walking out hand in hand, he asks if there's anyone in the city who could fight him, but none would stand a chance. Just then, a familiar voice calls to him. Alice and Dorothy have come to reorganize, excitedly declaring that they have news. The two floor bosses came rushing as the sun began to set, urgently calling for their third member. Excited to share the news, Alice joyfully started talking about magic, but Haru quickly covered her mouth, telling her to shut up right away. He gestures to the saintess behind him, saying she can hear them loud and clear. Briefly explaining the situation, he says she's a member of the church who, for some reason, clings to him. Hearing her affiliation with the church, Dorothy tenses up and asks how they know each other. While it's all a tangled web, he'll make sure that her presence won't affect their quest to find the Demon King. However, the succubus argues that they're a formidable enemy of the Demon Clan who would be a huge risk to have. She suggests seizing the moment to get rid of her, but he scolds her for making such a quick judgment. It's better to keep things low-key, and having a maiden with them would help keep things under wraps. After all, who would ever think that a saint and a demon are traveling together? Finally, Alice chimes in, reminding them that there's still the main event. The two ladies got word that the auction house is auctioning off a demon girl tomorrow. Given the circumstances, they suspect that the demon girl is none other than the Devil King herself. However, considering how powerful she is, he finds it skeptical that Edith would be captured. That said, things are lined up too well, so they have to check the event out even if it fails. Alice then starts to get shy, obviously guilty about something, and says there's something more. The action is also going to feature the latest fragrance from the Empire as well as brand new handbags. Seeing their true motives, Haru wonders why Minotaur even sent them out together. With this, they all agree to head to the auction house as soon as possible. He looks back and turns to the maiden, inviting her into their adventure. They move on in one group, and the townspeople couldn't help but stare at the odd combination. Instead of keeping a low profile, more people began to talk, questioning why Haru was with three beautiful women. Fortunately, his wit prevails once more, and he decides to put his companions to good use. He gathers them together, wrapping all three in his arms and hugging them tight. They blush out of embarrassment, not expecting him to do something so out of character. Alice demands to know what was going on, so he explains that it's all for the sake of a better disguise. After all, it'd be great if someone strong got too annoyed and picked a fight with him. He boasts and raises his voice, asking the onlookers if they've never seen a handsome man before. His plan works as expected, and the people there start itching for a match with the arrogant zombie. They find it absolutely ridiculous, but he keeps on eating them on. Finally, they decide to band together to teach the young man a lesson. A fight ensues but ends after a while. As they resume their journey, they continue to grab attention, but now for a completely different reason. Haru was covered in scraps and dirt. After realizing that they couldn't beat him, the townspeople started throwing trash at him instead. Just then, Dorothy's voice called to them, announcing that they had finally arrived. Looking up, they see that the auction house is quite the spectacle to behold. It stands as one of the premier establishments in the Empire, boasting construction nothing short of magnificent. However, he notices that it's already closing up when it's not even dark out yet. The maiden explains that it only opens its doors once a month when the auction begins. As such, Haru decides to return tomorrow, as he also needs to remove all the dirt and gunk on him. There are plenty of inns around there, so they should be able to find something that suits their needs. Smelling himself, he grumbles while looking for a place to stay. They enter one inn and ask if they have available rooms, but are immediately turned away. The same thing happens for the second place, and on the third, they're rejected before he could even ask a question. Apparently, all places are fully booked due to the monthly event held by the auction house. Haru falls to his knees, wondering if they're really going to end up sleeping on the floor. Just then, someone calls to them. An old lady gently asks if she can help them with anything, but the zombie quickly turns her away. To his surprise, she correctly guesses that they've tried and failed to find a hotel. Fortunately, it just so happens that her family's inn has available rooms and can cater to them. Excited over the news, he rushes to her, nearly hugging her as he asks the old lady to take them there. With this, she leads the way to their lodging. Dorothy can't help but feel suspicious of the lady's smile, but Haru is sure she can't take them anyway. They reach the hotel soon enough and enter without trouble. The woman hands the key over and reminds them to just check out tomorrow at noon. Confused, he looks at her and tells her to wait. There are 4 of them there, but only one key was given. Since tomorrow is the busiest day of the month, The store is buzzing with visitors, and this is the last room open. He bashfully looks at the three women. When asked what they want to do, no one seems to have any problem with staying in the same room. His heart beats fast, wondering if, after 3 decades of hibernating, his luck with romance has finally awoken. He suggests cuddling up, but Alice rejects it, saying he'll be staying on the floor alone. However, he freezes upon entering the room and seeing it covered with pink laces, romantic wine, and a warm bath prepared. All falling still and in silence, Haru breaks the moment, exclaiming in disbelief as they were in the love hotel.